Hello, Capital H listeners. Welcome back. I'm David Mallon, head of research with our human capital practice and our chief futurist. If you hear some noise in the background, a bit of energy, we are coming live to you from this year's HR Technologies Conference in Las Vegas. We are at the center of conversations in the HR world right now on all things that are happening in terms of future of HR and workforce-related tools and technologies. And on that note, today, I'm privileged to be joined by Michael Allison. He's Director of Education and Development at Bridgestone Americas, and Travis Burke. He's Executive Vice President at Docebo, where he leads corporate development, partnerships, and international growth. Michael, Travis, and I are going to be exploring a skills-first approach in navigating the future of work. We'll talk about why skills matter more than ever. And of course, we couldn't come to a technology conference and not talk about AI. We'll also spend a bit of time talking about cultures and continuous learning and how organizations can continue to develop them. Thank you, Travis and Michael, for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so let's dive straight in. I'm going to ask a first question, but it's going to serve a couple purposes. It's also a chance for you to introduce yourself, your organizations, your role, and then set a stage for us. And that is, what are the drivers facing organizations today that you think are pushing us to think differently about skills, pushing us to take more of that skills-first approach? So why don't we start with you, Michael, and then Travis?
Okay, great. So within my role within the organization, essentially, I do run the education department for our entire retail organization. And within that, right, it is a very skills-based, heavy environment. We have vehicle service technicians, we have customer service teammates, we have a field entity, we also have a corporate store support center. So we have all of these different white collar, blue collar, and gray collar areas that have to merge and work with each other. So from that perspective, focusing on skills is kind of that conduit that makes all that stuff work. If we focus too heavily in other areas outside of just, okay, what skills do we have within our organization that can accomplish the mission, then we can't remain agile and move quickly.
I think just to add on to that, I work with a lot of customers across our entire customer base at Docebo. And what we really see is it's not necessarily an industry-specific problem, that all of our customers are facing the same issue. And that's that the needs and desires are really outpacing the supply of skilled workers. And so as we think about that and the growth, it's really how do we do more with what we have today, and how do we think about upskilling our current employees and growing the base we have, as opposed to relying on a workforce that isn't necessarily aligned still to the skills that we expect and we need. In addition to that, a lot of our workers are doing, upwards of 70 million workers a year are doing work and learning and growth outside of the workplace. And so how do we really capitalize on that to grow and take advantage and understand what we have within our great workforces that we have today?
So that reminds me, we did in our annual human capital trends research this past year, we had one of our trends we were focused on was this notion of an experience gap, that more and more organizations are saying it's not just a lack of certain skill that's a challenge. They think the worker's not coming in with a certain set of experience. But as we started to unpack what that meant, we sort of realized experience is just a proxy. It's just a stand-in for, when you say, I want 2 to 5 years of experience, you really want someone that has used a skill in context. And one of the areas that companies are sort of struggling with most is in hiring, especially early career folks, because they haven't yet had those chances to use their skills in context. This is me leading up to this question of one of the things that I think some of the companies we were talking to that are starting to unpack this problem, it's overlapping with this move towards really rethinking why we ask for certain educational credentials and how that might be us essentially being a little bit lazy, and we're missing out on talent because we're not actually unpacking, well, that university gave that degree and we're just trusting that university then to mean that certain things are true. And we should really just unpack what were we looking for in the first place, right? So Travis, maybe get us started. Like, why is the degree maybe holding us back?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think as we look at sort of the alternative ways that people are obtaining skills today is something that the traditional degree path of high school, university into the workforce doesn't capture. That's the 70 million number that I referenced before, people that are getting alternatively skilled and entering the workforce. And a lot of companies really just don't know how to understand and assess what those employees potentially offer to their companies. And so as we think about that opportunity, and I think everybody's business is getting squeezed because of AI innovation and trying to understand where they're going. So they need to do more with less, but they have new people entering the workforce that they don't really know what skills they have. So I think understanding what you have today, but also understanding what's entering is really an important thing that the traditional sort of degree path doesn't necessarily lend itself to.
Yeah, I do think that traditional degree requirements, they do omit a sector of the workforce. And a lot of this sector has very valuable skills and experience that can be leveraged to empower the growth exponentially in profitability for an organization. Obviously, there are roles that require degrees, certifications, and those are the price of entry. And those requirements must be protected, must be maintained. But who are we missing? When I think of that workforce that we're missing, I think of like veterans. I think of people with real world validated experience, people who have that entrepreneurial spirit, and people who have critical and lateral, innovative, unconventional thinking that you may not find from someone coming from university.
Sure. But what you just said in your answer was you've stopped to inventory what you were looking for in the first place, right? And then you go look for that versus essentially trusting, well, if they have this 2 years of experience or they have this degree, right? But what are the signals in your world, in your company, in your market that are making you realize we should be maybe asking ourselves different questions here?
Well, for me, being 20 years in the automotive industry, and as I kind of called out, you have that mix of the blue collar and the white collar and the gray collar. And when you think of an automotive industry and you think of a player in that industry, they could have a manufacturing base, they could have a corporate base, and they can also have a retail organization all wrapped up into one. So I can't say that there is this magic shift that's happening within my industry. I think it's just always been there. I think it's just deeply rooted because you have to move at the speed of retail, or you have to, work within the confines of manufacturing. You really have to determine who has the right skills at the right time, at the right place to make all these things come together. So manufacturing has specific required skills. Leadership is a skill. Customer satisfaction is a skill. So I think, in my opinion, the automotive space is actually the ultimate validation of skill utilization outside maybe of the military.
But Travis, I would imagine one thing that is different about today is AI. So maybe give us a sense about sort of how AI is at least informing, if not reshaping, what skills we need or what skills we have.
Yeah, I think actually tying on to Michael's point, we're also, even though organizations have really dropped some of the requirements, or if they do drop the requirements for a specific degree for a specific role, still seeing that the need to assess skills and understand how those infer into abilities is a really important part that a lot of organizations are still missing and they're trying to figure out today. So as we look at the impacts of AI, that's where we see as a business that our customers are asking us the most. There's obviously ways to create better content using AI and have many different ways that people interact with your system, but actually understanding what your workforce is doing by not only looking at the top-down approach of a traditional organization, you build a job matrix with certain skills attached to each job, but also understanding what the employees have, whether that's through skills inference because of their experiences in the workforce or outside of the workforce even. And then also looking at how does that translate into the jobs you have and the jobs you need as you think about internal mobility and talent development. I think also there's really two populations. It's the new people joining the organization. How do those skills fit with what you have today? But it's also looking at your workforce and really understanding how can you be getting more out of what you're doing today and understanding what you have.
One of the things we're seeing though in our research too, and I'd be curious both of you if you want to validate this or not, is that AI in an interesting way is making it more obvious that we need to, even though it's a technology, it's shining a great big spotlight on that we need to pay even more attention to those, pick your title, power skills, durable skills, we call them enduring human capabilities, but those sort of personality traits that we all have, but some people have had a chance to practice them more than others. It's sort of highlighting just how important those are and assessing them is.
Yeah, I think it's often really hard to assess historically and now how good of a problem solver or an analytical thinker or other attributes like that. It's really hard to assess how good somebody is at that in an interview, right? We've all hired people who we thought were going to be great and then got in and you realize they were missing some of those fundamentals. So I think that is one area where you see customers asking us a lot, how do we use this AI tooling, whether it's virtual role plays, whether it's assessments or something of that nature, to really understand what skills do these people really have as opposed to what's on their CV as they come in.
I 100% agree. And the thing of it is as AI comes into the workplace and as we have to evolve to align the skills that are required to support AI, you think about, you called it out. Who do we have and how are we training people to be more of a critical thinker, have good, strong leadership to be able to make those calls? AI says one thing, the team says another. I'm the leader. I have to make that call. So also having the ability to have good analytics and quality assurance is going to be key from a manufacturing perspective to just how the customer relationship actually is within your industry. So, but I think another big area is going to be those technical hands-on implementations that are going to have to happen as a result of AI.
Makes sense. Any other emerging skills we should be aware of?
I think there is this concept that we, as an organization, but also with our customers, think about is this like AI fluency. So AI is changing roles, it's changing where we focus our human energy, but it's also how do we then build fluency. I'm sure every organization in North America today has probably too many AI tools. All of a sudden, went from none to too many very quickly. And trying to assess which of those tools are actually really going to help to grow your workforce is a struggle for all organizations. And so how do you build the right sort of framework and governance is really important, I think, to help your people be successful. I know my team sometimes look at me and say, hey, we have 10 different tools. I want to get better at all of them, but like which one's actually going to help us grow what we're trying to do and the results we achieve as a business. So I think from that standpoint, it's like a really nice complement to what we're doing, but it also needs the right governance and workflows and framework around it to be successful.
That sort of teases up the next thing I was going to get to, which is what we're noticing is that obviously almost every day some new study comes out about whether or not companies are getting their ROI out of their investments or not, right? But there's a thread that runs through them all is that there are organizations who are, but they're usually focusing on different things. And one of the things they're focusing on is exactly what you're describing, the sort of human element, the interactions between people and AI. They're thinking about the balance of agency and automation versus augmentation, et cetera. We're thinking about questions of, well, I could take that responsibility away from that human and give it to that agent. And maybe that might make me go a little bit faster or cost effective right now. But it also could mean that human is less motivated or doesn't have the opportunities to practice a skill into the future, et cetera. So there's kind of a balance there. I'm curious, and maybe Michael, I'm curious how your organization is thinking about those sorts of questions.
Well, with any new technology, right, the adaptation of how that new technology is going to impact your business and then how that actually impacts the individual teammate at the level, you have to kind of understand the new technology is going to evolve. Everything that's new will eventually evolve into something different throughout its life cycle. And you have to keep up with the skills at the time that it was implemented. And you have to be able to also evolve those skills as the technology also evolves.
I think also one of the concepts we've seen from a lot of our customers is this concept of sort of human in the loop automation. And so how do we make sure that we're providing the right tooling, the right framework, the right growth so that we can try to keep up with the pace of some of this innovation, but still have the person or the employee at the center of using that tooling. And so that's where we've seen a lot. The AI speed in all organizations right now is very quick. But how do you also make it efficient as you go through that process?
I think embedded in what both of you are saying, and this is, I think we've seen it too, is this is going to require a somewhat new discipline, a sort of design of work that most organizations are not really, you're used to doing it when you build the factory. You kind of design the space. To your point of the traditional use of robotics, right? We were used to that. We're used to sort of, okay, we have to create this factory space. The robots are going to be here. The assembly line is going to be here, et cetera, right? But we all took the humans for granted that they're kind of fuzzy. They'll fill in gaps. But when you go to sort of develop an AI kind of enabled organization, agents and the like, you have to sort of dig in a way at the detail level that you probably didn't necessarily, or not used to doing, let's say, in the past. Okay, so maybe let's shift then to this topic of culture. Skills First seems to also lend itself towards, you mentioned, Travis, about sort of understanding what we have or what we need. How does that cross over into the things that we aspire to be, the kind of what we want our organizations, our people to be, our norms, our values? And in that context of a skills first culture, what sorts of beliefs, access, connections, what's going to be most critical for our success and why?
Sure. So I think there is this journey that organizations go on, but also all employees in those organizations go on along that spectrum as well. And so if you think about it between belief, visibility, access, and connection, we really feel strongly that visibility is a key driver for success in this. So I think a lot of people are into the belief stage that we understand that skills are important to understand how we're using them and how we're growing our workforce that way. And now it's about visibility. As an employee yourselves over the years, you want to understand how you grow your career, what your career path is, where you expand, and what your opportunities are within the organization you're in today before you decide to go somewhere else, if not. And so understanding now as it's getting more sophisticated, how do I actually see, how do I get from point A to point B? How do I understand the skills I have today and how they confer to other things I might not have even thought that they do today in the organization? But then also, how do I get access then to grow them and move from sort of hypothetical growth to really movement of your career and growth? And I think with disconnected workforces, with a lot more remote work and things like that over the years, we're seeing that it's really important for people to have visibility, that they can understand on their own. They don't have to be physically in the same room as their manager or superior to understand it. And we're seeing that across a lot of organizations today.
It sounds to me like your visibility, when you say visibility, you're really trying to shift what we consider valuable, what we consider sort of the currency of our careers, from thinking it's the job title over the door or your resume to something more granular, to something more closer to sort of, these are the things that I can do. This is the places I can lean in.
Yeah, I think it's really important, probably a layer down than it had been in the past, to understand the skills, the gaps, the capabilities, and understanding the mechanisms to achieve those a lot more granularly than in the past, where it was like, I want to go from level 1 to level 2.
Right.
Let me read the job description and understand it. Now it's like, what are the sort of micro components that really drive that change and help people, the right people, grow in the organization?
Michael, are you seeing this shift happen at all inside your organization?
Yes and no. Being in education and development, I take a different lens to it. I'm kind of more in the beliefs camp. And the reason that I say that is, if you think about, you were probably taught this in college, right? Adult learning theory. Adults learn for a reason. And that belief in the benefits to learn something is actually what motivates an individual to learn a skill and to move forward. So if a teammate believes in the skill that they're pursuing to do whatever they intend that skill to do for them, what's in it for me, for my family, for my career, whatever the case may be, if they believe in it, and then the company also takes the time to also believe in the skill that that individual has learned, now we're working with something really, really good, because we can take an individual who's passionate about a skill that they just learned, and the company respects that the skill was learned and they align together. Now we're doing better things, right? We're moving faster, we're moving with purpose, and we're moving with passion. So I'm more on the belief side of it, but yes.
But to some degree, when you say belief, especially playing back, that the worker believes they can do the thing and the organization believes that they can do the thing, you're really just talking about validation. And if we've taken validation now to your sort of that more granular level, we're trying to move away from, let's just not trust the university degree. Let's just not trust your job description or your resume. Let's actually get more into the weeds. What is technology's role in, you hear about it, micro-credentialing and the like. What's technology's role in actually doing validation at this level?
I think actually tying to that point around access is really important, right? To me, that's kind of like the connection between visibility and belief, right? Is, okay, we all understand that this is what we need to do and we're bought in as employees, but our organizations are also bought in. Now, how do we give them that on-the-job learning opportunity, that in the flow of work that we talk about a lot? I think that's like the key part to tie that all together. And that ties into then how do you, and what's the right level within organizations? I'd be very interested in Bridgestone view on this around sort of that micro credentialing, and how do you think about the connection of like the day-to-day improvements in someone from a skill journey standpoint?
Yeah, no, I think assessment is a big part of this. And traditional assessment, you think of having check-ins with your teammates or doing formal assessments for whatever role that they may require an assessment. It is all the normal things that we've done for years and years and years and years. But now we have AI. And I'll actually say with Travis, the learning management system that Travis and I partner on is an amazing piece that does exactly that. It takes a look at what a teammate is required to take for training, but then it's also looking at what they're also maybe playing around with or looking at and becoming interested in. So that's where those kind of micro skills start to shape, and we can start to say, hey, this individual, they do this for their job, but they have an interest here. Well, maybe now we take some of those more traditional ways that we engage with our teammates and we have those good performance conversations and we say, hey, because of this, are you showing interest here? And then hopefully that allows that teammate to grow within their role based on something that they're interested in, not just because they have to do it. And then obviously that makes the company more productive and profitable and everybody's much happier.
Makes sense. But I take your point about access because combining with what you both just said, it's probably using assessment in a more broad, beyond just the traditional moments we use it. For example, at hiring, it's probably using it in a more frequent way and in a kind of more out in the organization way, I would imagine. So there's a big access piece to that.
Yeah, and I think what's, again, going back to like the AI innovation in our space is really the thing that I'm most excited about for it is the ability to create content and ways for people to get these skills within their organization, but deliver it in a variety of different ways. Before it used to be, we all know how not great the experience is when you have to go through a course that's super boring in a learning platform and you scroll through the pages and it takes forever, right? Today, we're able to deliver learning content in so many different ways, whether it's in a virtual role play scenario to help understand those skills, whether it's gamified in a podcast, those types of things. So there's a lot of different ways that our customers are consuming it and building tools that allow them to really use a central body of knowledge and then disseminate that to different roles in different ways is like game changing for a lot of our customers.
Okay, so then roll up what you've just described and help us understand how would we know we're successful? How do we know that we have started to move the needle both for the individuals, so they have a different set of beliefs, a different set of what they consider valuable, and then how does the organization know, okay, we have a better picture about what we have and what we need? How do we measure that?
So when I think of that, and I think of individual teammate productivity and utilization versus the business results that we're seeing, right? Try to get that down to as strong of a piece of data that you can actually identify because of the skills that the teammate possesses, they are this productive, and we are utilizing those skills as we should within the organization. At the end of the day, do we have the right teammates with the right skills in the right place based on the role's requirements? Are we doing good skill assessments? Are we doing strong engagement surveys, having good stay conversations, teammate check-ins? Because if we can get the personal side of it from the teammate's perspective, what motivates them, what skills they're interested in, and then that shows that the company is invested in their development and their wants and needs. And if they can come together, here we go. I mean, the teammate can be strong, productive, and happy. If they're happy, maybe they stay with the company. Now retention goes, you can see where this can all snowball. But you have to listen to the teammates and you have to give them the proper training and the guidance to help develop the skills that they are passionate about.
I hear lots of useful metrics there. My head goes to how do you bring them together into one place so you see that kind of combined story? But Travis, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the talent outcomes is the most measurable for us. We live in the learning world. That's where we're focused, and our customers are very focused on a day-to-day basis. So for us, that's mission number one, is trying to make our organizations that we work with have better talent outcomes. From a business outcome standpoint, I think you're seeing some organizations now touting what AI has improved with their workforces and productivity. But it's such a hard thing for companies to isolate today in terms of like AI saved us this because our employees got X amount better is a really hard measure for organizations today to isolate. So I think we will see that over time, but that's as a result of, as Michael said, the talent outcomes really improving over the next generation, maybe of the workforce to really understand like how much more efficient can we be when we really understand what's happening with our employees and their skills.
Makes sense. And I think that's a good place for us to start to wrap up. Before we do, always like to have our guests kind of leave our listeners with a bit of sort of parting wisdom. So maybe starting with you, Michael, just if our listener hasn't yet moved down this skills first path, what's a good sort of first piece of guidance you'd give them?
It's a great question. And it is a hard question for me to actually answer because I've kind of lived in this space. It's like almost ingrained. It's what I do.
Well, how do we become Michael?
Yeah, that's a great question and also scary at the same time. So I would venture to say that take an opportunity to actually look at your teammates. Look who is in your business unit. Look at the wide range of experience and knowledge that actually lives there. And then do just a good, strong assessment to say, is Travis better suited to do this role? Can I have a stretch assignment for Travis? Can we do that? And see how they do, how they react, how it all plays out. Maybe on the job description, maybe it doesn't say must have a 4-year degree. Maybe it says must have a 4-year degree or equivalent experience. And let's look at some of those applicants. And let's really, because there again, if it says must have a college degree and the person doesn't have a college degree, they won't even apply. So let's see what else is out there.
Actually unpack what we're looking for. Makes sense. Travis?
Yeah, I think it is really hard because it's where we live every day to really like go back to like, how do you do this properly if you were a blank sheet of paper? Because a lot of organizations have already made that top-down motion over the years, right? Over hundreds of years in some cases. And so understanding how do you still get what you need as an organization without fully scrapping everything you have today and really working from the framework you've built. But then I think really understanding that bottoms up, how the workforce is changing, how people are obtaining skills, how do we then assess them and infer them into the jobs that they're doing is super important. And when we talk to customers, those are the most animated conversations I think we have, because it's a little bit of everybody has different views of it because it's not a formulaic thing that we do today. But I really think using the tooling that's available that's really rapidly evolving really helps organizations kind of find that middle ground between the top down and the bottom up on the skills problem.
All right. Well, that will do for today. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you, Travis.
Thank you.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Please do like and subscribe wherever you find us. Leave us feedback and reach out to us on social media. Tell us what you liked. Tell us where you'd like to go next, where you'd like us to go next. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, stay curious. This podcast is produced by Deloitte. The views and opinions expressed by podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Deloitte. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice or services of any kind. For additional information about Deloitte, please go to deloitte.com/about.